So I have a list of about 65 things that's wrong with the publishing industry. And I'm like working my way through them of like, how can we fix them and everything. Writing a book at the moment about how not to write a non-fiction book. It's very like kind of jokingly offensive, but it's, you know, all the mistakes I've seen authors make over the years and it's going to have all of the lessons of, you know, kind of things I've seen people do wrong, basically. I grew up kind of believing that like, I'm here to change the world and make it a better place. And like, I believe that's what we're all here to do, you know, to make the world better for others. So I guess like on a personal level for me, there was an author called Vanessa who we worked with last year. Vanessa is 70. She came to the UK from the Caribbean island of Nevis when she was 7 years old. She came on a boat on her own, literally like, she had a guardian, but she left her family behind. And so she wrote the story of how she came to the UK and like her life growing up here. And it was just her dream to publish this book. So we'd go and meet her in a coffee shop, like, you know, in between our two houses. And we took everything in paper so that she could, you know, see the copies and everything. And when we took her the book, like she cried when she finally saw this book. And, you know, we had little illustrations of the cakes her grandma used to make and photographs of all of her family. And Niall recreated an image of the boat that she traveled on. So having that like personal impact on someone's story, basically being able to share that with the world.
Hello and welcome to the Knowness podcast, the Vault of Knowledge. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Vault of Knowledge. Today we'll be talking to Ameesha Green, the CEO and founder of The Bookshelf. We'll be discussing her journey as well as how she's helping to make the world a better place, one book at a time. So thank you and join us for this week's episode. So would you like to introduce yourself today?
Yeah, I'm Ameesha Green and my company is The Bookshelf. So we started in 2018. Okay. And we've been in business for like nearly 7 years now, which is very cool. I've seen some like damning statistics about, you know, businesses failing in the first 5 years, especially for like first time business owners. So I'm very pleased that we've got this far.
Yeah, you know, it's very hard to get like past those, you know, first couple of years, but to make it 7 years is crazy. That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm hoping it will continue in the same,
same
way.
Hopefully, the same trajectory. Let's start with The Bookshelf. So what is The Bookshelf?
So essentially we help people to write and publish books on their subject matter expertise. So it's all non-fiction, and I like to call it books that make the world a better place. So it's often like business books, it might be philosophy, psychology, self-help, but there's a kind of common theme that the person is trying to like share their knowledge. Help people like learn a new skill or a new approach, you know, kind of like leave a bit of a legacy for themselves and their family. And often they're like entrepreneurs or business owners as well, or maybe they're trying to become thought leaders. So writing a book then helps them kind of establish their authority within their own industry. Maybe land like a TED Talks. A few of our authors are TED Talkers, for example.
That's really cool.
One even got an OBE off the back of his book, which is like incredible.
That's actually crazy. That's really cool. So where does this kind of idea like start from? Because I've never heard of like, you know, because, you know, growing up, I know a lot of like my friends and stuff, you know, have like dreams and ideas of starting like a business to make money or to go into uni or you know, become a footballer. But where did like that come from, the idea of like, you know, starting all of this?
Do you know what? I wish there was like a really nice, smooth story where it's like I completely planned this from day one. But honestly, I'm a very like go with the flow kind of person. Like I went to University of Birmingham and I studied English literature and philosophy. And I kind of knew like I wanted to work in publishing. I had this very, this ridiculous idea that I wanted to move to London and work for Penguin and work on like the latest fiction books. And I worked on one fiction book and I was like, this is not for me at all. Whereas basically a group of University of Birmingham medical students who I happened to be friends with were just like, oh, we're writing this book. Do you want to help? Like, we've heard that you proofread people's essays. So it was completely random. I had no idea what I was doing at the time, but I was like, this seems like a good opportunity. So I edited this book and I just loved it. And basically I kind of realized there was like this opportunity out there for people who, you know, maybe don't have the support of a big publisher, and especially with the rise of self-publishing. There's like so many authors who are out there kind of on their own who don't have that support. Basically I kind of knew then that I wanted to start my own publishing company, I guess in a very vague sense. But to caveat this, I graduated during the 2007-8 recession, which is kind of revealing how old I am here.
Yeah.
But yeah,
time.
It was definitely rough. Like you kind of went into uni thinking like, oh yeah, I'll, walk out of this into a £22,000 a year job because that's what it was like before. And then you graduated and it was like, there were no jobs. It wasn't even about salary or, who you were going to work for. It was like, you were lucky if you had a job. And I know it kind of went like that again recently. So I'm sure people have experienced the challenges.
Yeah, job market is not fun at the moment.
No.
But especially back then as well, is really rough.
Yeah. And also like, kind of, it sounds funny, but like the internet wasn't really a big thing then either. So like when I wanted to get a job then, I literally got the Birmingham Mail newspaper and was like circling jobs at the back. It sounds so old now. But yeah, I literally saw this job working at the fire service headquarters, like in Birmingham. And it was delivering post. And I was like, yeah, cool. Like, that, that sounds like kind of some transferable skills that I can learn. So I started doing that and I just worked my way up there. So I ended up working in like HR and employment law. Did that for about 5 years and learned some like really, really useful things that as a business owner have been absolutely fantastic. But I knew I wanted to work in publishing. So literally every weeknight, every weekend I was freelancing. I was so boring. My friends would be like, do you want to go out? I'm like, no, I've got work to do.
Busy, yeah.
So yeah, basically I started just like proofreading, writing web content, literally kind of doing any kind of work in that sphere basically.
Yeah, in that area.
Help. And I started again working on like a couple of books. So the first book led to a second book and a third book.
Yeah.
And yeah, after about kind of a couple of years of doing that, I found a job working for like a small publisher in Birmingham.
Okay, yeah.
It was a graduate job. I had to take a £15,000 pay cut to go and do it.
Okay, yeah.
But it was totally worth it because I then got to like learn the industry from the inside out and actually see like how do all the processes work together? How do you operate a publishing company? What can go wrong? So it was like invaluable.
The best experience you could get. Yeah,
absolutely. Like incredible experience. And then I did what any sensible person does, quit my job to go traveling for a year. So literally was like a digital nomad. And I was working from like laundrettes and coffee shops and
I've always wanted to do something like that. It's kind of hard because with my background like medicine, but
if you get the opportunity, like
it's
I totally
recommend
it. It's honestly like it's so much fun.
So whereabouts did you go?
I had one of like the round the world plane ticket, so you just have to keep going. Is the kind of deal, and it's kind of like a bit free flowing, so you don't have to actually book your ticket. So I did like a couple of months in Australia, like New Zealand, Vanuatu, Japan.
That's so
it was like
cool.
Loads of places.
Just out and about, and you have your own time and stuff to do your own thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very remote, so.
Yeah, and you can kind of work when you want to. So freelancing was like absolutely perfect. But then when I got back from traveling, I actually got offered like an in-house job and I even accepted it. And like the night before I was going to take it, I was like, this doesn't feel right. And like, I couldn't sleep. And if I can't sleep, like there's something wrong because I could sleep like pretty much any time anywhere. But I was like, this isn't right. And I called the boss at like 6 a.m. and was like, look, this isn't for me. I can't do this. And I told my friends and family I'd turned down this job that was very well paying, very like nice job. And I kind of thought they would all be like, are you mad? What have you done? And they were like, no, do you know what? Like, if you don't have to work for the man, then don't. Like, carry on doing your own thing. And at this point, like the freelancing was going quite well. So I just like wholeheartedly threw myself into freelancing as a full-time kind of job. And yeah, I found it a bit lonely though, especially like after getting back from traveling. So I set up this meetup group called Freelance Birmingham and grew this to have like over 400 members.
Oh, wow, that's a lot.
It was really cool. Like 40 of us used to meet regularly in 1,000 really trades in the Jewelry Quarter, which is like a little kind of independent cafe. And I built this network up of people who also had these like amazing skills. They were all working for themselves. And so then after a couple of years of freelancing, authors started asking me, because I was like editing their books, for example. They'd be like, oh, do you know someone who can do my book cover? Do you know someone who can, turn this from a Microsoft Word document into like an actual book? And so I kind of just responded to, like customers' problems, I guess. I've been like, oh, well, actually, they want someone who can help with this. They want someone who understands how Amazon, how to upload a book onto there. And so I just started then reaching out to my freelance network to be like, oh, can you help with book covers?
Does anyone know how to do this or this?
And so I accidentally grew a freelance agency. Like I totally had a plan to do this. And suddenly I was like, oh, I'm basically operating pretty much a publishing company, but I didn't really mean to.
It's accidentally,
It was completely accidental. I'd sort of forgotten my original thing of like wanting to start a publisher, and then at some point I was like, oh,
that's basically what you're doing
anyway. But at that point, it was like kind of individual freelancers. And so then I started actually like kind of hiring people. So I started taking on interns through UOB. Publishing is like really difficult to get into. Just in general, there's not many opportunities, and it's a very chicken and egg kind of industry where like you can't get the experience till you've had a job. You can't get a job till you have the experience. I started like taking on interns. I took on 7 in my first year, which might be a little bit.
Sounds like
it was a bit full on, but like it was amazing. And then I ended up hiring one of those as a full-time editor for me. And just started like building my team out. And then I took on it's actually my life partner and my business partner, Niall.
Oh, okay,
So there's a lot of like husband and wife teams around Birmingham actually when you look at like business owners. But
that's really that's really cool.
So I took him on as an ops director because it like the company was growing, and I realized that like I have ADHD. Organization is not my forte whatsoever. So he came on to start like putting systems and processes in place and like making it possible for us to expand. So everything has been very organic. Like it's really not been planned. It's all just been a case of like kind of responding to like market need and sort of like looking at what our competitors are doing or looking at what's going on in the industry. Like now, for example, with AI and going, okay, how can we use that and like build that into what we're offering? That's a long story to tell the short story of there was no plan.
No, but I find that so like interesting, like how all of it was natural, but everything like pieced together so well, like a jigsaw piece to make this big final, image of where you are now, which is really cool and like inspiring as well to kind of just do what you enjoy. And then that leads you to wherever, it needs to take you, I guess. But it's really cool. Like, if you was to like kind of look back at this whole entire process and to reflect on it, is there any like advice you'd give to anyone going on like a similar journey? Where they have something they want to do, but there's not really like a set route to it, if that makes sense.
That's a really good question. And I actually do a lot of student mentoring. So for like the last 13 years, I've been a mentor at UOB, and I mentor on the NatWest Accelerator, which is like another kind of incubator program that I was on before the UOB Elevate program. And I get asked this question quite a bit. And like, I think one of the key things is people understanding what kind of lifestyle they want, because there are lots of different options. And I don't think I really grasped the difference between kind of being like a freelancer or a solopreneur and like running a business. Like, I think in my head, they were quite similar. And actually running a business is like as different from being a freelancer as like being an employee is. Whereas I thought like, oh yeah, it's just the same thing, but slightly bigger, but like it really isn't. And I actually met a couple of friends recently who were freelancers, and they're thinking of starting their own business, and they were asking like, should we do it? And I was like, you really have to understand, do you want the lifestyle where you have the freedom and the flexibility where you can just go traveling and go work from a beach if you want to, or do you want to grow a company that potentially could like have a massive impact, but like it does, I will be honest, take a big hit on your work-life balance, and it can become very like all-encompassing, and those are very different paths. So I think I try to help people understand now, like, what is it that they want to achieve personally? Is it about their kind of like their individual career path, for example? Is it about achieving that like big scale, impact in the world, and helping them to really understand, I guess, what is it that they want to get out of, their whole career path and everything. I don't think many people like necessarily plan that from the beginning. And a lot of people don't realize like what running a business is actually like. So, I do talks and stuff now where I'm like brutally honest about life as a business owner, because
it's not easy.
No, it's not for the faint-hearted. And like, I think some people kind of get into it and then realize maybe it's not it's not the right, not the right path. But in general, I would say if people can get like a taster of it first, you know, if they can like have a go at some freelancing, see if they enjoy it, sort of maybe like shadow a business owner and see what their life's
the business
like.
side of things is like.
Even down to like subjects and stuff. I think, you know, it's very difficult to say like, I want to do this career if you've had no experience of it. So if you can like, you know, just get as much experience as possible in whatever you're interested in, and then you discover, is it actually right for me? Like me thinking I wanted to work on fiction books and then working on one and going, wait, no, like I don't enjoy this at all. Otherwise, I might have like applied for a job at Penguin, ended up getting what I thought was my dream job, and then just hated it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think it's like, you know, kind of the more exposure people can get to whatever they're interested in, and then they start to work out like, is it right for them or not? And you know, like I changed career after 5 years. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that.
Yeah. So getting a taste of essentially everything, and then using that to kind of guide you as well. I mean, we have something kind of similar on the Knowness website, the careers guidance, available at knowness.com. And it's a similar thing where a lot of students, I think it's 44%, regret like their choice of a degree. So the idea behind it is giving them a taste of these different courses just so they can know if it's actually what they're actually interested in or not. So again, it's a very similar thing.
Yeah.
You know, giving them a taste. And I said that's kind of how it worked with you as well. Which, you know, obviously worked out really well, thankfully.
So I'm actually the philosophy subject lead for
Knowness.
So I've just been writing the university taster course. And I think like that is so important because most people don't have any, you know, kind of experience of philosophy maybe before they get to study at a degree level. There are A levels, but they're not widely available. And I was like really lucky that my college offered it, but most don't. So that university taster course, I think will like, you know, hopefully really help people to see is philosophy for them. And you know, I hope it will. I think what you guys are doing is absolutely amazing because I actually started off doing a Spanish degree, and in my first week I was like,
nah, it's not the one.
I don't want to do this. And luckily I could switch to philosophy, but like not everyone gets to just change their degree in the first week. So
but it's like I said, it's hard to know like what philosophy is like at uni, because I'm interested in philosophy, but does that necessarily mean I'd enjoy it at university level? Do you know what I mean? So that's why courses like this are really important. But you know, going back to like the bookshelf and you know the journey you've been on, what would you say is like if you could you know look back at this whole journey, and if you could go back in time and change anything, would you, or is there nothing? Or are you happy with like how everything's kind of, you know, planned out and everything?
That's a cool question. Do you know what? I actually wouldn't change anything because I kind of like, you know, the whole butterfly effect thing that like if you change one thing, like maybe you wouldn't have ended up here, and you know, you could have gone back and done something more perfectly, but I guess like you wouldn't have learned from the experience. And like the biggest kind of lesson I've learned through all of this is that everything is a lesson, like everything is a learning experience. And, you know, if you hadn't have like made that mistake, maybe you wouldn't have learned that important lesson. So I think it's really for me, like I wouldn't have changed anything. Just because, maybe I wouldn't have ended up here. And
no, I was going to say, because it seems like with your whole journey, there's so much that's happened and so many experiences you've learned from it, even from things that may not seem good, but then ends up being good in the end, and you get lessons from it as well. So I feel like, in your instance, that's a really good answer. Like there's nothing, it's all part of the experience, all part of like learning, the growth, all that kind of stuff. But it's an amazing journey. And you know, it's led you to the bookshelf. But, you know, speaking more about the bookshelf itself, is that open to anyone, or how does it kind of work, like in more detail?
Yeah, so I don't know kind of how much you know about publishing, but there's basically there's like two main paths. So there's like traditional publishing, which is what everyone thinks of when they think of publishing, right? So it's like your big companies like Penguin, Macmillan and Simon & Schuster. So to work with one of those that, like, let's say you wanted to publish a book, right? And you want one of these. You have to, for nonfiction anyway, you have to write a book proposal, which is basically like a business plan for the book. And it's very, very commercial. So you have to prove that like there's an audience, you can quantify the audience, there's a return on investment, because
to prove it will actually sell, there's the actual interest.
Yeah, right. Because like it costs a lot of money for a publisher to publish a book. So they want to, you know,
some proof.
They want to make some money from it. So basically you would have to apply to them. And you can't even apply directly. You have to have a literary agent. So they're like the middlemen between like people who want to publish books and the big publishers. And like an estimated 99% of submissions to agents and publishers are rejected. So there is a high barrier to entry, right? And we've also reached a point now where like the people getting published are primarily like, you know, people who already have an audience. So actually, one of the authors emailed me yesterday and he'd been like submitting his proposal to all these publishers. And one of them came back and literally said, we would only publish this if you were famous.
That's crazy.
And he was like,
crazy,
wow, okay,
yeah.
that's like, I mean, at least they're honest about it. But
Yeah,
you
but
know,
still, it's still like
it doesn't leave much space for kind of, you know, just ordinary people who don't have a big social media following. And again, like, you know, there was an author where they had like submitted their proposal to a publisher. At the time, they had like 10,000 followers on Instagram, and the publisher was like, "We're not interested." They grew their following to like, you know, 150,000. Same proposal. The publisher's like, "Yeah, we'll take it."
Yeah, we'll take it. Yeah, and they're smiling and everything. Yeah, of course.
So that's kind of how the industry's going, which is like, it's understandable because they need to make that return on investment, but also, then for like normal people who have something really important to say and like the story to share, they kind of shut out of the industry, and like it is still a very elitist industry, and like, you know, kind of what we're doing at the bookshelf, we're trying to like, you know, kind of break down those barriers and make it less elitist and just much more like inclusive and diverse as well, because it's still like a certain type of person getting published, especially in nonfiction. So yeah, we're open to anybody, like literally the authors we work with, and we have lots of female authors who are underrepresented in nonfiction, people who speak English as a second or even a third language, dyslexic authors, neurodivergent, like we're trying to make it as
accessible to just everyone.
Accessible and diverse.
People with no followers, people with 100 followers.
Exactly. Well, the followers don't even matter to us particularly.
Just anyone.
It's more of a challenge for them, you know, if they have fewer followers, because then they have more work to do with the marketing. But, you know, equally for us, it's more about like, does this person have, you know, something useful and important?
It's more about the idea rather than like all the other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So, we're really trying to kind of like break the stigmas and, you know, sort of democratize the publishing industry, which is like no small task.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that must be really tough. But no, that's really inspirational to hear. Like, because I guess, you know, like with you guys, like as you said, it's more so about the ideas rather than all the other stuff around it, which I feel like is how it should be for all publishers. But obviously, I understand they have to make money and stuff like that. But how's that kind of been so far? Have you had you know, any difficulties in getting those books out? Because there's like with these publishers, they have to make money. So how does that kind of play a role into this?
Yeah, so basically the traditional publishers, the way it works is like they give the author a percentage of the sales at the end. So like they take their cut out of it, which is about 95%. And then the author gets a very, you know, kind of small amount at the end of it, because most of it goes into like production and marketing and everything like that. Whereas the way we operate, we primarily work with self-publishing authors. So with them, they're like, you know, they're publishing their own book. They are their own publisher, but they're getting the guidance and the expertise from us. So they're getting that like, you know, kind of industry insider information, but they're still keeping their control, their autonomy, their royalties, their copyright and everything. So we're trying to bridge the gap basically between kind of traditional publishing on the one side that's very, you know, like elitist and inaccessible, and then self-publishing on the other side, which it kind of got this reputation of being quite like amateurish and poor quality.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So we're there in the middle, like helping authors.
It's like a bridge between the two.
Yeah, basically. But the way it works is just people pay us up front for the services, and then they don't pay us any of their royalties. So if they end up becoming a millionaire, we're not taking a cut of that. We're just you know, helping them at the beginning. And like my role, I'm actually known as a book shepherd, because we basically guide people through the process. So yeah, it's like, it's a very different kind of approach to traditional publishing, but like, especially for people like business owners and entrepreneurs, it works really well, because the other challenge with traditional publishing is it takes like 2 to 3 years to see your book in print. And imagine you're doing this for like your career because you want to become a thought leader. You can't really wait 3 years and put your career on hold.
For 3 whole years.
And like some of our authors, like for example, they're publishing tech books. So a guy who we just worked with, he was the head policy attorney at Google in Silicon Valley. And he's written a book to like revolutionize the internet and, you know, to influence policymakers. If he waited another 3 years to put that book out there, you know, like everything will have changed.
It'll be out of date. And
so for tech, like the minute you publish books, they're out of date. So, you know, kind of, it helps people get the books out there faster as well, because we can work on like, you know, 3 to 6 months, we can get a book out there into the world. But the challenge, as you just mentioned, is how do you share that with the world? And, you know, publishers, they have marketing departments, they have agreements in place with like Waterstones and Foils. And author publishing on their own, they don't have that. So the challenge for them is really marketing, especially if they don't have that big social media following. So we've actually like expanded to offer kind of marketing services as well, because we've realized people are struggling with that. But
to get their stuff out there.
But you know, if they want to like have their book in Waterstones, they literally have to go in again with a business plan and try and like persuade each individual branch of Waterstones, like please stock my book. And they need the sales data to support it from Amazon or wherever. So like there's still some big gaps in the industry that kind of need filling of like, how do we help self-publishing authors get their books into like physical retailers? But you know, that again, that's like something we're working on, and hopefully in the future, we'll help them improve that.
No, because it's like I said, like the bridge is built. It's just building upon it more and more and more, and kind of like making those lines between, you know, the big publishers and the small publishers a bit more blurred and a bit more merged together, which I think is really cool, because it makes it, you know, there's so much like you said that people can share to the world. But with like this threat of like, not threat, but like this big barrier of these big publishers, it's not really, you know, something that you can really do. But for these self-publishers, what is like the main way you've seen that they've been, you know, publishing their books? Is it mainly like online on Amazon, or is it like physical books? What's the kind of like trend been?
Yeah, so there's generally a mixture. So like Amazon, I think an estimated like 80% of people go direct to Amazon to buy books. They use it as a search engine now. So like it's sensible to have your book on Amazon. And they do print on demand. So like it's really easy. You can literally just upload a book in about 10 minutes and like, you know, Amazon will then like print it, bind it, package it and send it out for you.
I thought you need like a whole separate like
No, it's honestly, it's so easy. You don't need a whole garage full of books or anything. You're not like going to the post office every week. So Amazon really changed the industry when they made this available to people. So that's like one method, and you can have it as like a print on demand print book, but you can also have like your Kindle ebook as well. And Audible and audiobooks. So there's kind of a good range of options there. But then also there's a platform called Ingram Spark. They're more of like your business to business platform. So they're intended for like publishers to upload books, so places like Waterstones can order them, because they go into like kind of a wholesaler middleman back end system. So for people who want their books to be available in bookstores, they also need to be like in Ingram Spark as well. But then what we help people do is also work with local kind of printing companies around the UK who are very ethical. So they all have like recycled FSC certified paper. And then people could maybe get like 200 copies, sign them, hand them out at events. And so a lot of the marketing actually comes from, you know, like if they're doing a talk and they're handing out copies and asking people like, share it on social media, review the book for me and everything, like having those printed copies.
Like organic marketing in that way.
Makes a big difference.
And this is like more, you know, personal towards you. But the next question is like, you yourself, have you published any books, or have you thought about it? Or
do you know what? It's really difficult to have the time to work on my own books. But like, I'm writing a book at the moment about how not to write a nonfiction book. It's very kind of jokingly offensive, but it's, you know, all the mistakes I've seen authors make over the years and just like, please don't do this kind of thing. So I'm hopefully going to self-publish that this year.
That'd be really interesting to read.
That's like, it's going to have all of the lessons of, you know, kind of things I've seen people do wrong, basically. But then December, not this one, but the one before, I published a children's book, and it was completely, again, unplanned. So we had an intern in from UOB, and they were doing like a design internship. And they said, oh, I'd love to work on a children's book. And I was like, well, we don't publish children's books. I was like, oh, but actually, I wrote this book when I was a kid. So when I was 4 years old for a school competition, I wrote a book about my cat. And it won the competition. And as parents do, my mom kept it in the loft, right, in a box. And she still had it. So I handed this book off to our intern and Shelby, who's our lead editor, who also came through UOB. And basically was like, you guys do whatever you want with this, like turn it into a full book if you want. Somehow it ended up becoming a full 32-page, like illustrated, full color children's book. It's called Where's Marmalade? And it was about my first ever cat called Marmalade. And so we published it, like as I say, kind of just over a year ago. We had a launch actually here at the Exchange. which was so much fun. And like I invited like my friends and family and all of their kids, and we had games and like colouring in. And
that sounds really fun.
Yeah, so it was really nice, but I never planned to be a children's book author at all.
Yeah, it just kind of happened.
But no, it's been really, really nice. And actually I got like a couple of 100 copies and donated them to children's book charities.
So sweet.
There's a really nice charity in London and Birmingham called the Children's Book Project.
Okay, yeah.
And they have, they go into schools and they set up a bookshop and they give kids a token so they can go and buy a book of their choice. And a lot of these children, like they don't have any books at all. But they get to go and pick a book, which I think is like just such a lovely idea. And so, I donated like a couple of 100 copies to them and various other charities. So it's really nice to think that, there's like kids out there who I don't know who are reading my book, and maybe it's like inspiring them to write books in the future as well. But every so often my friends will like send me pictures of their kid, like them reading the book out to their kids, their kids looking for like the Marmalade cat around the house.
Or it could be a kid out there and that's their favorite book when people ask them.
Yeah, that would be
really cool to think
really
about.
Nice.
Yeah. But I feel like with all this, it's so cool because like a lot of people, like me included, have always the idea like has crossed my mind, like maybe writing a book or something, but it just seems like such a like an impossible task almost. It seems like such like a big thing. Like you have to be like really like a very big author and all that kind of stuff. But with all this, it seems a lot more accessible.
Do you know what? It's so accessible. And honestly, I do really believe the whole saying of like everyone has a book in them, because I think everyone has their own story, their own journey, their like, life experiences that they can share with people. And you just don't know who that might inspire or, what you could like pass on to the next generation of people. So I honestly think like, everyone could write a book, and it is so much easier than people think. So like we actually work with people now where, we'll just audio narrate it. Like, if you don't want to write it down, and then just send us a transcript and we can edit it, or we have ghostwriters who can help people if they don't want to do the writing. But like it can be so easy. And a lot of business owners, they already actually have the content. Maybe it's like in blogs, or like they've written a course, for example, and they can use the course and just like turn it into a book. Even people who've like done, like a PhD, and they then turn their PhD into a book. So it's so much easier than you would think. And actually it's so much easier to like publish compared to 15 years ago or something.
I was going to say, have you noticed like a shift over time? Has it become easier over time?
It's so much easier now than it used to be.
Yeah,
you should do
really
it.
Good.
If you want help, come to us. We'll help
to the
you.
Bookshelf.
We'll help.
Maybe we'll do like a Knowness book at some point as well.
Yeah, you could totally do that. That'd be really cool.
Like the story and everything. But that's really cool. And when it comes to like the Bookshelf specifically, like we've seen like the journey and how big it's gone. But what's kind of like any future plans at the moment? Do you have, or
Yes.
can you not say?
Yeah, we always have so many plans, literally. So like one of the things I started doing when I worked at NatWest was making a note of any problem I noticed in the industry, because one of the things we got taught was kind of, as I say, like respond to industry problems and industry demand and like notice those gaps in the market. So I have a list of about 65 things that's wrong with the publishing industry. And I'm like working my way through them of like, how can we fix them and everything. But a lot of what we're developing now has come from like directly sort of noticing those problems in the publishing industry. So one thing we're working on is project management software. And we actually tried all of the project management software out there and tried to get it to work for our needs, and it just like didn't work. We even had like one of the big project management companies create this like bespoke kind of version for us, and
tailored for you guys,
tailored for us. Still didn't solve our needs, and our customers just didn't understand it. And all they kept saying was like, it's too complex. And a lot of these people, like, they're not particularly techie, so they don't want something really complicated.
It's something simple, easy to use,
really simple. We've been working with another local company who I actually met through the NatWest Accelerator, they'd already designed some software that they could just modify for our uses, and the whole thing was just this really simple, like
easy to
kind
use,
of
product management,
intuitive, user-friendly software. So we're actually in the testing stage of that now, and it's called Book Simpler.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. Like, our authors are trying it out, and hopefully that's something we'll be able to offer, across the publishing industry, because there are lots of, small companies like us who don't have that software. So they're manually working through spreadsheets and like Google Drive
and it's hard to kind
emails,
of flip through everything. And
WhatsApp and everything. So this will just put everything in one place, and you can track like a whole project through it, and maybe like invite your own freelancers or your own team to work through there. So we'll eventually kind of go out to publishers and see if anyone wants to, license our software. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
And then we do plan to expand that into like a much bigger offering that will really, help to break down like that elitism that I mentioned earlier, and, to make the industry more accessible, more diverse, more inclusive, and also to solve the problem of students leaving uni and not having like the skills and experience. But I can't really tell any more about it. 'Cause it's like, it's still in the works, but I really hope it will make a massive difference in the world. And as I say, that's all just from kind of looking at the problems in the industry and thinking like, how can we solve this and make life easier for people?
No, but it's really cool to see like how it starts off as this, idea, and then it's accidental, idea, and then it's grown to something as big as this, which is really, really inspiring to see. There's another question I'll ask, but from, all the books you've published and helped with, is there any that kind of really like stuck out to you and really made like an impact to you? Or
yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I probably should say, the ones that will like change the world, because that's really like what I always set out to do. So even as a kid, like I used to read philosophy books as a kid. I was like super weird. And like I grew up kind of believing that like I'm here to change the world and make it a better place. And like I believe that's what we're all here to do, to make the world better for others. So I probably should say like one of those really books. Revolutionary books. But I guess like on a personal level for me, there was an author called Vanessa who we worked with last year, and she found us completely by chance because she used to go into this little independent bookshop, and the manager there happened to be one of our former interns. And Vanessa had mentioned to the bookshop manager that she like wanted to publish her memoir, and so she was like, "Oh yeah, I'll like put you in touch with Ameesha. She can help you." And so Vanessa is 70. She came to the UK from the Caribbean island of Nevis when she was 7 years old. She came on a boat on her own, literally like, she had a guardian, but she left her family behind. And so she wrote the story of how she came to the UK and like her life growing up here. And it was just her dream to publish this book and to be able to share it with people. And she doesn't really use the internet. So we'd go and meet her in a coffee shop, like, in between our two houses. And we took everything in paper so that she could, see the copies and everything. And when we took her the book, like she cried when she finally saw this book. And, we had little illustrations of the cakes her grandma used to make and photographs of all of her family. And Niall recreated an image of the boat that she traveled on. So it was just like such a special personal kind of, experience to like be trusted with her life story and to, to have that kind of, just that really special moment with her. So and then after she published the book, she shipped like a couple of 100 copies to Nevis, and she went back there and she's been doing like a book launch tour around the islands in the Caribbean and sending us photographs and videos. And it's just like seeing her dreams come true. Her honestly, like it's just been so magical. And I think she can't believe it. Like we can't believe it as well. So like, kind of just having that like personal impact on someone's story, basically being able to share that with the world.
And it's like, being able to help facilitate that. And to like, bring those like really, really real human emotions and those connections like to other people. I think that's really special. That's really cool. And like you said, it's completely by chance. So
completely by chance. I think that's kind of been the theme of my whole journey.
But it's so cool to see, because I guess it really inspires you, anyone watching this as well, to just kind of just do it. Like especially with her, she had this idea and just kind of went with it. And then from that, everything else came.
And she finally published it at like 70 years old, which is amazing.
There's no barriers. So like you said, there's no barrier like in terms of age or background or how well you can speak English or anything like that.
Our youngest author was actually 15, and he had like his kind of guardian to sign contracts and everything. But literally he was writing a philosophy book at 15 years old.
That's really cool. But it's really like kind of opened my eyes in terms of just how accessible it is. But okay, let's say if there's someone, an audience member who wants to like kind of write their own book, is there any specific advice you'd give towards them? And it's a very open question, very broad question. But I guess maybe based on some of the past mistakes you've seen and stuff like that, what's some like advice you'd give to that person?
That's an interesting question.
Very loaded question.
No, it's cool. Like I talk about this a lot on LinkedIn, and actually, especially for people writing nonfiction, like I probably can't guide too much with fiction because that is a very creative process, and it's like a very different way of writing books. But for nonfiction, I take people through this coaching process. And I call it like who, why, what, how,
Gotcha.
when, where, like those kind of questions. So yeah, the first thing is just basically what they want to write about, like, what's their USP, what they could write about that's maybe like slightly different from everybody else.
Yeah.
Who is really important. So like, who specifically are they writing for? What's the reader's like problems, goals? Why is the reader here? What do they want to get out of this book? So having a really clear focus on like the target audience and understanding them and, really knowing what problems they want solving. And then how would be like kind of how it's structured. So like, where does the person begin? Where do they end up? Kind of what's that like A to Z approach that they're taking? And also like the writing style. So yeah, generally, kind of does the person want something very like chatty and informal, or maybe more like academic?
More like.
And then we just work through those questions. So yeah, just really like focusing in on each of those points and starting to build a bit of a plan around, those different questions.
Gotcha. And then from there, getting a strong idea of if this is something you want to do or not.
Yeah, and then they can start doing some research as well. So looking at like similar books and then going, oh, okay, well, when you read the reviews on Amazon, you can clearly see there's a bit of a gap because it's like, oh, well, people really enjoyed this book, but they really hated that it wasn't practical. So like you could write a similar book, but it would be really practical and it would be using your personal experiences. So you can sort of build out from the initial questions into that like market research.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And then the next question is a bit of a weird one, but if you look at the opposite, when should you like not write a book, or what are the indicators that you shouldn't go through the idea, which is it's very opposite to everything you've kind of been talking about.
That's a cool question. I guess some people feel like they should write a book, but they don't really want to. And like, maybe other people have just sort of like
told them like, oh, you should.
Other people have kind of influenced them, but they don't enjoy it. They don't really want to do it. They can't really see what benefit it would have. Like, I think it's something you have to really want to do for some reason, because you have to be motivated, in some way.
It's a very long process, I can imagine.
Yeah. And you've got to be committed to it. So if you're really not interested in it, then like, there's no point doing it. And I've worked with people where like I do coaching, for example, like book coaching, and a few sessions in, they're like, do you know what? I actually don't want to write a book. And you're like, well, that's great, because don't waste your time on it if it's not for you. But there's no point.
But at least now that it's not.
There's no point wasting your time. You can go and like learn something else instead.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And then going back to the bookshelf itself, what would you say? You've mentioned some of this briefly already. But what are some of the main big barriers left from bridging the gap between big publishers and self-publishing? What's like the main ones still out there that you're trying to tackle?
So other than marketing, I think for a lot of people, it's just them having the knowledge of like where to go when they're like struggling. So people might start out like writing on their own, but then they might not realize like they need support from a team. So they might, or maybe they do need support from a team, but they don't know where to go. So I think, just people understanding that there are like freelancers, there are small companies who can help them even if they're self-publishing. So I guess it's around that awareness piece of like, they're not on their own. I think people think self-publishing means you have to go it yourself the whole way. And like, that's not true. How do people find out about companies like us? How do they find out about various freelancers who could support them on their journey? And that they don't, kind of go down this whole path on their own and then meet someone at the very end who could have helped them. And like, that's happened quite a lot to me where someone's met me at the end and they're like, oh, you could have helped me the whole way through. Then you can always go back and help them afterwards. But, it would have made that journey a lot easier for them.
A lot faster and smoother as well.
So a lot of what we do is like blogging, and we have our own podcast as well called Better Shelves, where we just talk to self-publishing authors to try and give them those tips earlier on so they're not on their own. And like, I answer questions on Quora. Like, I don't know if you know the question. Yeah, so I have like 2.5 million answer views on there, just chatting about publishing.
Just talking about publishing,
just to spread that awareness so people, know where they can get support and know that they're not on their own, and that there's like, designers out there who can help them create a book cover and create the, inside design of their book. And there are marketers who can help them. And, there are people who can help through that whole process. So, but if you don't know that those people exist, then you don't know to even go and look for them.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like that's the, a big issue that even with me, because I wouldn't know about any of this. I wouldn't know where to look, where to go. But I think like the bookshelf would be a really good like anchor point, a good central point to then tell you and guide you into which direction you need to go and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So
Which
we
I think is
actually
really
offer
cool,
calls to authors at the beginning. Literally, like if someone's thinking of writing a book, I will do a free call to just talk them through their options, to tell them about the difference between traditional publishing and self-publishing, the pros and cons of each of them, you know, to help guide them and help them choose the right path for them, because it's a very individual choice. And then, you know, if they do want support along that journey, we can help them with it. But yeah, really, I just want to, you know, kind of share the knowledge about like, how do you publish books easily and like, you know, what are the paths you can take? So yeah, just spreading the knowledge basically.
Yeah. And from a lot of your authors that they work with, what's kind of like, has there been like a trend in terms of motivation as to why they want to publish a book? Is it because they have something, you know, something really deep that they want to share? Or is it because they want to make a bit of money or a bit of cash on the side? I was kind of like the main like motivating factors.
Yeah. They might have the thought that they would like to make some cash, but honestly, like one of the things I tell people up front is like, you don't really make money off books these days.
Yeah.
You can make money indirectly off books, but often it's from whatever you're like upselling to, whether that's like from a course or consultancy, or that you want to open doors to have those like public speaking engagements and stuff. But yeah, the actual amount you make off the book is like, it's normally not a huge amount, but that's kind of not really why I think people should do it. It's much more about like the opportunities that the book can lead to and the doors it can open for them. So I do try and talk to people about that up front, because I don't want them to go into it with the misconception that they are going to become a millionaire off their book, because like they're probably not going to be. But you know, it will open doors that hopefully will, you know, lead down the path that they're looking for. But yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I guess for most of them, it's about like making a difference in the world, and particularly the type of people we work with, because we try to work with very like-minded kind of authors who are really trying to, you know, have a positive impact in the world, and, you know, just sharing their wisdom and their experiences to like help other people learn and, you know, develop new approaches. So it is very much that like them wanting to give back more than them, you know, wanting to like earn
gain something
so,
from it.
You know, there is the kind of aspect for their career where they, you know, maybe they do want to get a TED Talk or something, but a lot of it is this just very personal desire to just share their
people.
expertise and help people. And it's really nice to work with people like that as well, because we you know, we have the same vision and goals then, that we're all trying to make the world a better place, and
they have like that strong motivation, that desire to go through with it.
Yeah. And then the good thing for them is that like, even if they don't make a huge amount of money from the book, what I hear from authors all the time is like, if I can just change one person's life or just make a difference to one person, then I'll have done my job. And if it's 2 people, like even better, or 20 people or 20,000
it's
people.
Like a bonus, more and more and more.
But it's like, for them, it's just really just having that impact on people's lives. So, and that's like an amazing thing to be able to help people. And that's really why I carry on doing what I do. It's like that ripple effect of thinking, well, like, okay, if that book changes one reader's life, and then, you know, what effect will that have in the world?
Because that's one of the questions I was going to ask, like your motivation for you know, everything that you do. And I guess is that the main one? I'd assume,
yeah, like really it's just making
helping people,
making a difference in the world. You know, I feel like I'm not doing what I should be doing in life if I'm not like helping people. Really like my way of making the world a better place is through books, among other things. But it's kind of something
giving
that's
people that platform. And
and it's like, it's something that I've just, you know, had in my mind since I was literally a kid, like just that wanting to like make a difference in the world.
And then here you are achieving it.
Hopefully.
Definitely. Which is really inspiring to see and to listen to as well. And then, you know, another question I'll ask as well is, it's been like, you know, 7 years, right? And it's been a very, very long journey, and, you know, lots of ups and downs I can imagine. Yeah. What would you say has been the biggest, you know, problem you've had to like overcome in the 7 years?
Yeah. Oh, just one is difficult to choose, right?
Or you can name a few.
I think there have probably been a few. The biggest one for me personally, I think was, and John said this on his podcast, was getting out of his own way. So John Reynolds from Match Day.
And for that podcast.
It's funny because like, I could totally resonate with that. When I started the NatWest Accelerator program, I had a coach called Laura, and she was absolutely amazing. And quite early on, I'd been in business for about 2 years at this point, and then COVID happened. And so at the time, it was just me. And, I'd started to develop a bit of a freelance agency, but I was never planning to have a full-time team.
Yeah.
And Laura basically said, what do you think about having employees? And I was like, no way. I came from a HR background where like people are problems. And that was the, the way I saw things. And she was like, we're going to come back to that in 6 months' time or a year's time. I was like, okay. And then I kind of realized at some point that I was my own blocker because I could only do as much as I could do, and I couldn't clone myself, right? So I needed to be able to start like handing tasks off to other people. And also because if I wanted to have a publishing company, there was no way I could do every task, every role. I couldn't be a cover designer and an editor and a proofreader and a marketer and a book coach. So I needed people to, bring those skills. So I quickly realized that she was right and I needed to think about having a team. And then, when I started taking on a team, she just laughed. She was like, I knew you would change your mind on this. But actually, being a perfectionist as well, like trusting other people to be able to do the work is a difficult one. And even just knowing how to like train other people. Like I'd never trained somebody to be a book editor. It just came intuitively to me. So then trying to teach people, how do you like structurally edit a book? I was like, you just do it. So
it's hard to really like explain and give like a tutorial.
So that's been a big kind of lesson for me of like, how do you teach other people, and, really having those systems and processes in place so other people can like, pick up from where you've left off and understand how you do things in your company. None of that came naturally to me like at all. So definitely that has been like a really big challenge. And I think the other one is probably just kind of, I guess, just managing life as a business owner, because it's like, it is challenging. You work very long hours. And I think when it's like, when your business is your baby, you kind of, you can end up just getting a bit lost in it. And like,
really getting absorbed into it.
And like your friends and family are like, oh, are you going to come for dinner? And you're like, no, I've got work to do. And they're like, but it's the weekend. And, we've been quite strict with like imposing, kind of more structure in the last few years where like we don't work weekends and we try not to work on holiday because my mom gets really annoyed if we do. And maybe, so I have a separate work phone, and like when it's not business hours, that phone is away somewhere, because otherwise I'll get drawn into like replying to people and, just it can take over your life. And I think it's a really tough lesson to
know when to step away and to just relax.
And to go like, no, I do need some time for myself. Like the business can't be, all the time. And I think there's that kind of joke, isn't there, if you swap the 9 to 5 for the 24/7. And a lot of people go into business as well with this idea that they want a better work-life balance, and then it ends up being so much worse. But it's like, I think that's one of the toughest thing, and I'm still working on it. Like I'm still trying to figure it out. There are times where I'm like, oh, I've maybe worked more hours than I should be this week, and it's a balance. I don't think you can grow a successful business by only working a couple of hours a week, but equally, you can't burn out, and because then you can't run your business at all. And burnout rates for founders are really high.
I can imagine.
So I think it's that, kind of protecting your own mental health and well-being as well, and getting the support from other people. And programs like Elevate are amazing because you get to spend time with other business owners, and you all get to support each other and build that that network. And I think it's so important to to have those people who you can kind of share the highs and the lows with, and get support from. So I think I've been really fortunate that I had that through the NatWest program, and then I've also had
and
that
also
through
here as well,
Elevate as well. And we've been part of a few other programs as well, like the West Midlands Combined Authority ran a program as well. So I think those things are really important for founders to find a community for them, and find their people, because your family don't always understand as well. Family and friends can be very supportive, but sometimes they just don't get it, and they just think you're mad for
just going so into
for doing this,
because they just view it as just work. But like you said, you view it as your baby, it's your child. Something you have to like nurture and like look after and stuff. So I can imagine it must be very hard to kind of like pull back.
Yeah, to separate. And also because you're responsible for like bringing in enough income to support you and your team as well. And that that kind of mental responsibility and pressure, that's a lot as well, you know, to know that people rely on you to pay their bills. And so you can't mess it up. It's, I think it's a very different, you know, kind of lifestyle. And it's, you know, it's definitely not for everyone. That is one thing I would say that, you know, I think if people are considering starting a business, they really should like spend some time around business owners to understand what it's really like, because you know, I think the view of entrepreneurs is like we're all the Stephen Bartletts of the world, and you know, for most people, like it's not like that. You know, we do work very long hours, and it can be tough. So,
and especially all these pressures as well on you and stuff.
I
want to ask as well. It's a bit of a personal question, but I think you mentioned earlier ADHD. And the way I've seen it described is it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
So how has that kind of like, you know, played a role in your business?
So I actually didn't realize I had ADHD until one of our interns joined and was like, "Do you have ADHD?" And I was like, "I don't think so. Why?" And then I looked into it and I was like, "Oh wow, so much of my life makes sense now."
Yeah, in retrospect.
So I definitely think that the whole blessing and a curse thing makes sense, because there are some things that, you know, as a founder are like so helpful. So that ability to like generate ideas and have that very like creative thinking and to have
like driven minds.
Very like energetic kind of, driven like passion for your business. Like all of those things are really important. And I think that's probably why so many people with ADHD end up starting businesses. But then the downside, as I mentioned earlier, is like, you know, kind of some of the executive dysfunction things like organization. You mentioned the organization, decision making, and like particularly time management. Like, you know, I am late for everything all the time. And it doesn't give a good impression as a business owner when you like, you know, turn up to a meeting and you're late and you're running and you're sweaty. So, you know, having someone who can support with those things, I think like makes a really big difference. And for me, like bringing Niall on board, and he's just so much more organized than me, you know, and having someone there to just help
kind of
you
balance it out a bit more.
To really balance each other out, and like to bring complementary skills and help you with the things that you're struggling with. I definitely like couldn't have done this on my own, because I was getting to the point where I was just like spinning so many plates and a few of the plates had fallen off. You know, definitely, you know, having someone who can help with the things that you struggle with is like, is really, really important. I think also recognizing that you can overcommit to stuff, you know, like one of the things with ADHD is you basically say yes to everything.
So you just take everything
like,
all at once.
That worked really well for me up to a point. As you saw, you know, I just said yes to everything, and that's how I managed to build a business. But equally, there's a point where like you keep saying yes, and then there are no hours left in the day. And then you just burn out. So you know, having someone who's like, okay, no, put some boundaries
more
in,
grounded,
say no to some things. You kind of need that, like, you know,
knowing when to say yes and when to say no, and
a buddy to help with that is like important.
It's life changing. Okay, and I guess the final question I ask you now is, you know, like I said, it's been an amazing journey for you. If you could just you know look back at everything, if there was one lesson you could take from it, and you know, something you describe as the most important lesson from everything, what would it be? Again, a very difficult question. You know, I hate asking this whenever I do, because again, there's so much. It's hard to pick one thing, but pick one thing.
I think the biggest thing is probably recognizing that you can change how you view things, and so like I follow the philosophy of Stoicism.
Gotcha.
And one of the kind of principles of Stoicism is that we think that things are good or bad, but actually everything is neutral. And it's the kind of values that we assign to things that we decide something is good or something is bad. And then we kind of react or feel accordingly.
Based on that,
But if we can look at things of like, okay, well, I've decided this is bad, then I could also decide it's good. So if I make a mistake, I could look at it as like, oh, I'm stupid, or, you know, I've caused a problem here. Or you could look at it as like, oh, actually, this is an opportunity for me to learn something. And like, yes, I made a mistake, but actually I can do something differently next time. And so it's that kind of just flipping the switch on like how we view things and having a different perspective. And like, when I look back, like I definitely have made mistakes on this journey, but all of them have really helped me learn something important. And I think, you know, we can get very attached to the feelings that we have about something, especially if we feel like we've, you know, made a really big mistake. You know, if the company doesn't survive, for example, like people can feel really bad about that. But yeah, if you view it as, okay, yeah, I made some mistakes, but actually, you know, I learned a lot along the way and I will do things differently next time.
Yeah, doing like a positive spin on it and a productive spin as well. What can you actually learn from it?
Yeah, and we're completely in control of, you know, how we view things and the judgment that we've assigned to something if we've decided whether it's good or whether it's bad or whether it's neutral. And we get to choose that. And I don't think a lot of people realize that.
And it's like a big part of like cognitive like behavioral theory as well.
You know what? Like, Stoicism actually is the underpinnings of cognitive behavioral therapy. Okay, this is where the ideas came from.
Because everything you're saying is very familiar to like the thoughts and ideas behind it.
Yeah, like control what you can control.
Everything is based on like how you view it. And your emotions are then, you know, based upon your own thoughts about a situation. Oh, okay, I didn't know it's based upon
literally it comes from so Stoicism came from the ancient Greeks. But it's actually become really popular in recent times as well. And I think it can really help.
It is very life changing.
Have that like different perspective. So I think for me that's been the biggest thing, is just kind of looking back at things and going like, okay, I learned from it. And as you say, like, you know, every one of those experiences that I had where at the time I felt like, why am I doing this? You know, it's all played a part in that journey. You know, when I was working in HR and I didn't really know why. Now that really helps me as, you know, a manager of people. You know, learning employment law has been really helpful. You know, every different experience I had
has played a role.
Has been really influential. So I think it's just that thing of like choosing how we view things and choosing to see something as a learning experience as opposed to, you know,
something negative or bad.
Something negative about ourselves.
But that's really, really cool. It's super inspirational. Thank you again so much for talking to us today. And that wraps up today's episode. So thank you guys for tuning in and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.